All right, everybody. We're going to continue our series on 3ds Max Basics for Modeling Video Game Assets, Volume 1. At this point in time, we're up to about Chapter 5 here. So basically, the curtain wall should be modeled, table and chair modeled, the fixed bridge modeled, and the torch modeled. We also would have skipped ahead to, I believe, what is Chapter 7 or so, where we cover like the UV mapping so that you could tackle the UVs at the same time as model. Okay, so rewinding a little bit back to modeling the gatehouse, we're going to do this in two parts. Okay, because the gatehouse has a couple of unique techniques, some techniques that aren't necessarily ideal but are worth learning. Okay. And in the second part, there'll be some animations involved. So we're actually going to animate a drawbridge that will come down and connect with our fixed bridge, as well as a portcullis, so like a gate that slides down. So we're going to handle the first part, which will be just modeling the actual gatehouse for now. Okay, so that brings us to Chapter 5, page 107, where we can have a look here at the game design document version of this model. So once again, we've got our metrics, we've got our polygon budget, and some concept art, including reference images, right? So we can see some reference images of different style of gatehouses. And then we can see the concept for our gatehouse, which is incredibly simple. It's got the same Merlon setup that the curtain wall had, so that shouldn't be too much of a problem. Looks like it's got the same batters at the bottom as the curtain wall did. And one of the big differences with this particular piece, however, is we're also going to be modeling an interior. Okay, so that'll be the first time we do some modeling of interior, and it will also be the first time where we kind of create like a hole in our mesh connecting the outside to the inside in order to give some windows. So it should be quite an interesting model. Okay, so here we go into 3ds Max modeling the gatehouse. Okay, so here I am in 3ds Max. And of course, the chapter starts out with the basic metrics to model the placeholder object. I'm just going to flip past the placeholder object again. I fully encourage and understand and agree with the value of placeholder objects. Okay, but since we are not technically actually making this for any particular title, we're just going to skip right to the real meat and potatoes of the project. Okay, so much like the fixed bridge, if we look closely at our gatehouse, we'll notice that it appears to be pretty symmetrical, which means we can just start by modeling one corner of it and then apply symmetry a couple of times to get the full scale of our gatehouse. So as I always say, it's best to know how to begin with the right primitives so that you've got a good foundation to just simply extrude from to build the item you're trying to build. So we don't have to stop and figure out what that will be because our textbook gives us the answer. So here I am on page 115, the gatehouse. Here we go. So first we're going to start with a box. I'm just going to go ahead and just make myself a box like this. Okay. And then looking at our textbook here, we're going to start with a length of 9 meters by 4 meters by 5 meters. Okay. And then we're going to have 9 length segments by 2 width and 5 height. Okay. So very large model. The largest model to date. Next to the keep is one of the bigger models we're going to make. Okay. So again, I'm going to go up to my default shading here, and I'm going to enable my edged faces so that I can see my edge lines. And I'm also going to go over to this color box here, and I'm going to make mine green because I'm a particular person and I like to model things in a certain way. All right. Now, normally I would ask somebody, what should I do next? And someone would answer, well, first you should center your object. So I'm going to go ahead and hit W on my keyboard, which will enable my move gizmo, allowing me to go down here to the bottom and use my transform so that I can zero out the location of this object. Okay. Once I'm all zeroed out, we can convert this into an edible poly. We're going to right click, convert to an edible poly, which will change our create tab into the modify tab, giving us all of our modeling tools. And now we can begin modeling. Okay. First step we're going to be looking at here on page 117 is we need to create like a bump out here. Okay, so for that we're going to go to our top down view of our model. So I'm going to hit Alt W to enable all 4 of my viewports. I like to go around clicking the Z key while hovering over a viewport in order to center and focus my object in my viewport. Okay, and I'm going to be looking for the top down viewport, and I'll hit Alt W while my cursor is over that viewport to make it larger. You can work in this 4 quadrants if you're comfortable with that, absolutely. I normally would as well. For the purpose of this tutorial / demonstration, I'm just going to make it full screen so everybody can see exactly what I'm doing. Okay, so our objective here is going to be to move a portion of this, about 50% of this, outward, creating kind of a bump out, almost like a bay window looking setup. So for that, we're going to use our vertices selection. So I'll press 1 on my keyboard to enable vert select, and I'm going to do a marquee selection over these 4 vertices. Understand it's very important to do a marquee selection, and I'll show you why. If I just click on the one vert that I want, or even control click on these top 4 verts, notice here in my perspective where my selection is just those 4 verts. Okay. But if I do a marquee selection, I will select all of the verts below as well. See that? I have all of these vertices selected as well. That's what I want. Okay, that's what we're going for. Okay. So with that, we're going to grab our red X handle, and we are just going to manipulate this outward like so, looking for approximately a 45-degree angle here. So if we observe our grid that we can see, that's not too hard to accomplish. Okay, and if we come back to our model here, we'll see that we've got exactly the result that we're looking for. Okay. Now, if we look closely here at the green shading on my model, we'll notice something happening here. I'll remove my edge faces for now. If we look closely, we can see this like bit of gradient, and you see how it gets dark here and then it lights up here, then it gets really light in this 45-degree and then gets darker here. You guys see what I'm talking about here? Even when I rotate it or there, you can really see the difference here, right? Part of that, sure, it's just the lighting reflection inside of my scene. But the other part of it is that this move that I made is not very crisp. Okay, it's not really sharp angled as we would like. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to our element select, which is 5 on our keyboard. I'm going to select the entire object. Okay, and I'm going to scroll down here into the about the middle of our list, and we're going to see here this polygon smoothing groups. Okay, this is a graph here that just represents all the different smoothing effects that are taking place inside of our model. And if we notice here, we're missing a bunch of numbers between 1 and 8. right? But we've got some smoothing groups that need tending to. Well, to fix these smoothing groups, we can just hit the clear all, and you'll notice immediately a small change in the red shading over here. I'll undo to show it to you again. So this time as I hit clear all, pay attention right here. You'll notice the shading will change ever so slightly. Did you see it? Okay, if I clear my selection and show you now, what you'll notice is if I take my edge face off again, that now we have a hard, crisp lines here. See that? So that's a good little practice to keep in mind as we go forward. We'll need to apply that a couple of times. Okay, so I'm just going to re-enable my edge faces, and let's move on to the next move. Okay, so remember, we're just modeling a corner of this at a time, right? And if we look at our concept art earlier in the chapter, there's merlons along the top here, which also indicates that there'll be some walkway and stuff up here. In fact, the curtain wall is what will butt up right up against this piece. And if you remember, there's a walkway across the top of our curtain wall. So players should be able to traverse across the top of the gatehouse as well, right across the entire gatehouse and then down onto more curtain wall if they want. Which means we need to create a railing system here. Okay, so for that we're going to need to make a face selection, which is 4 on my keyboard or clicking that option, and I'm going to select all of these faces here. Okay. Now we're going to perform a move with one of my favorite tools, an inset. Now we're going to use this inset tool quite a bit in this model, okay, especially for making our windows. All right, and it's right over here, very close to the extrude and bevel inset. We're going to do inset with settings. Now what inset does is it basically creates an extra layer of topology on these faces here. So I'll allow me to demonstrate. I'm going to do a 0.5 meter inset. And you'll notice here that basically it pulled my selection down and shrunk it a little bit, giving me an edge all the way around. And this is great because we can use this edge to create our front merlons, right? So I'll hit the check mark to commit to that one. Okay. Now, what we're going to do here is the inset kind of made a mess of this down here, right? This is a whole lot of extra topology we don't really need. And remember, we're going to be using symmetry here over anyways. So this end here was always meant for deletion. So I'm just going to use my marquee selection with face select. I'm going to double check, make sure I didn't grab anything I didn't intend to. Okay? And we're just going to slice that off like a slice of bread. We're just going to take that right off of there. Okay. All right. So now, as I've always said, I'm just following along with the book like anybody else would. So I'm reading ahead with you guys. I'm not doing this by memory or anything like that. I'm following the book. So now we're going to make the selection of grabbing all of these faces in the front part of our gatehouse, and we're going to extrude that to make the first part of our merlons. So we're just going to grab these 4 faces here, and I'm going to grab these faces as well. Okay, we should have a selection that looks like this, kind of like a letter B, if you will, right? Okay, so I've got 4 faces. I stopped short, leaving 4 behind. Okay, and we're going to do a 1 meter extrude, which should be trivial for you at this point if you were doing the other models. So extrude with settings. I'm going to do a 1 meter extrusion. Check. Okay. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to also be modeling the inside of this. So we know from our experience that when we're going to use symmetry, that we're going to symmetry across this edge to go out to this side, and we're also going to symmetry along the back side to get the back side of our building, which means ultimately we're going to end up deleting what we see here. But in the meantime, we can use this and extrude it inward to have the startings of our interior. So what I'm going to do here is with face select still on, so 4 on my keyboard, I'm going to select this row of faces here. Okay. And I'm going to apply a negative 3 meter extrusion. Oops. Make sure you clear your selection up top again there. This is what I mean. You got to make sure that you make the selections you intend to, and you don't accidentally grab anything you don't want. So we grab extrude, and this time we're going to apply a negative 3 meter extrusion. Okay, and you can see here it creates a nice like box for the interior of our gatehouse with the normals facing in the right direction, right? Which means we can texture this later on. Okay. So now that we've done this, we can get rid of the extra faces that we don't need. So for instance, these 2 faces aren't going to be needed because of our symmetry later on. And then also these faces here aren't going to be needed for when we symmetry later on. Okay, so we should have something that resembles this. All right, that would be a good time to save, right? So I haven't been pushing the save super hard, but maybe I should, right? So we're going to call this the Gatehouse 01. Save. All right, fantastic. Okay. Now our next move is going to be a little tricky. We're going to use a brand new tool. And what we're going to do here is we are going to create a ramp. So our gatehouse is significantly taller than our curtain wall is. And we need this walkway here to be able to reach the level of the curtain wall via like a ramp. Okay. Now you could bring your curtain wall in here. You can build this gatehouse inside your curtain wall project in order to eyeball this or line this up properly. Lucky for us, we have our textbook. So as long as we follow the instructions within our textbook, this won't be too much of a problem. Okay. So the new tool we're going to use here is kind of like extruding, but we're going to extrude with, and we're going to declare one of the edge lines here to be kind of a hinge. And by doing that, it will allow us to set a depth and create a ramp. Okay, so we're going to select these 4 faces. Okay, and with these faces selected, we're going to look in our caddy over here for hinge from edge, and we're going to open the settings menu. Okay, now this first number here is going to allow us to choose the angle for which we want to hinge from, okay, which for us is going to be -14, thanks to our textbook. Okay. And this last box here will allow you to select which edge you want to choose. Okay, so you select this edge, this box here, and then you get to choose which edge you want to hinge from. So if you look, so because I've done this before, a little bit of a problem to demonstrate here, but just select these 4 faces, hinge from edge, and just select the edge you want the ramp to lean from. Okay, then you just hit the check mark and you're all set. Apologies for that demonstration of that tool being a little bit strange because I've done it so many times in the past, the default settings were still there for me. But yeah, so just follow your textbook. We're on page 121. The explanation's there for you as well for hinge from the edge. But now the hinge from edge feature has also been a little bit kind of imperfect, right? Because it left all of these extra side faces up that we don't really need. Okay, so with that, I'm going to select any faces that I don't require. And I'm just going to delete them. Okay. And if you haven't guessed, we're just going to target weld to fix this. So go back to vertices, select, target weld, and we are just going to target weld these parts here, which, much like extruding, target welding should be trivial for you at this point, and a pretty easy tool to use. Okay. All right. So now our next move here on page 123 is going to be to create the windows for the gatehouse. So we're going to use inset again, and we're also going to have to watch because we're going to want to line this up with the interior here. So we're going to want to use like these two faces here, right? Because they'll line up with that interior that we've made beforehand. Okay. So we make that selection there, and we're going to use inset once again. We'll go to inset with the settings, and we're going to apply a 0.25 inset. What we're going to do here is we're just going to create a bevel, so that we get this little edge here. So like if I move this inward, you'll see we get this bevel, right? But the book has coordinates for us to use here. So we're going to go down into our transform on the X where it says 3. We're going to change this to 2.9 to get that kind of a bevel. It's so minuscule that if you wanted to eyeball this and just pull it inward, I mean, that's fine. You could do it that way. No tragic. That's not tragic. Then we're going to delete those two faces. Okay? And then we can see the inside, the back side of our interior wall now. Okay? Which means now we're going to do something a little similar on the inside. Okay? And connect this exterior window to the interior room. Okay, so if we rotate around, then it's going to be these two faces here that we're going to delete. Okay. And then once again, if we look carefully at our textbook here, page 124, we're going to narrow the distance, change to our border sub-object level mode. So we're going to switch to border sub-object level mode. We're going to select our border. Okay. And then we're going to go to our navigation here, our transform locate coordinates here. And we'll see here where it says a negative 0.1. We're going to change this from negative 0.1 to negative 2.5. Okay. And this will give us that same bay window bump out that we got on the outside of our curtain wall, or our gatehouse, sorry. Simple enough. Okay. So what they're basically saying here is with this selection still made, we're going to go over here and we're going to hold control and select this border over here as well. Okay. So now we've got the border on the inside and inside and outside selected. And if we smash our bridge button right here, we will complete the connection between the interior and the exterior window. Now we're going to go to our vert select real quick. And we are going to control select 6 verts here. Okay. I'm going to switch to scale, and I'm going to pull just on the Y handle just to widen this a little bit. Just to make it a little bit more interesting to look at and have a little more space. Okay. And that's connecting the window. Final change we're going to make is because the bottom half of our window is a little bit on the low side, right? A character or player could theoretically just run straight out this window. So we're going to switch to our edge select tool, so 2 on our keyboard, and our move gizmo, and I'm going to select this edge here. And if we go down to our Z coordinates, we'll notice that right now it's measuring at 2.25 meters. We're going to raise this to 2.5 meters, making the bottom part of our window a little taller. So we've got a window now. We've got an interior space. We've got a nice ramp on top. Starting to come together pretty good. Now let's get the actual opening for the gate going. Okay. So the gate, because we're going to be using symmetry, is going to be right in the middle of our model. So we only really need to worry about modeling half of the gate door, the gate entrance, if you will. So I'm going to press 4 on my keyboard to get polygon select. I'm going to select both these two outside faces here and the two inside faces, and I'm just going to delete those. Okay. I'm just going to select these 4 edges. Extrude. I get a 0.25. So this number here, you look at my corners, you see how they kind of bevel? We don't want that. So just make that 0. I'm just going to click the check mark. Grab these edges here. And I'm also going to grab these edges here, which is just another alternative, also in our textbook. Okay. And we're just going to do the same thing as we did with the window over there. And we're just going to hit the bridge button. It just makes more sense and looks pretty good. Okay. So what we want to watch out for now, though, as we start doing this, is we might start to find pieces slightly out of square. Okay, so you got to really look at the shading of your topography to check anything isn't lining up really nice. And it may need adjustment. So for instance, if we wanted to make this wall straight, right? Because now we've got like a point there on the inside of our wall. So if we wanted to make this straight, what we could do is we could go to our vert select, and I'm going to control select these 2 bottom verts and these 2 top verts. Okay. And if I hit scale, and here's a nice little trick. If I pull on the scale in the direction that all of my verts, they will find their own level. So if I pull on Y, and I push, oops, I'm going to need these ones as well. There we go. So with all of the 6 of these verts selected, if I push on the Y, you'll notice that those front verts are going to come back and the back verts are going to come forward. And if I keep going, they will stop on their own eventually because they will be 100% in line with each other, making this nice and square. It's a complicated trick to grasp in concept, but it's incredibly useful for getting straight edges and flat surfaces. Scaling with vertices. Okay. All right. Now, there's some problematic stuff coming up here. The book would have us vault the ceiling on the inside of our space here to create a little more room. But it comes with its own set of issues. And you know what? It's worth doing them so that you understand how to resolve these issues. So what we're going to do here is we're going to grab these top bunch of vertices, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And with my move tool, I'm just going to pull them up and create a vault in the ceiling. Okay. The problem is that right now, if we look closely at this face right here, you can clearly see we've kind of folded it. We've added a line in the middle of this, but it's not an edge line. It's just like a kink in the shading. This is a problem. This is not a good thing. Okay? And we can't just leave it like that. So it needs to be fixed. And the textbook would have us go here and create a bit of a slope down with this part of the ceiling here like that. We could also just grab these two again and do our same little scaling trick to get a nice line. Okay. And if we look, those three panels now are all buggered. And that's not good. We can't have that. There needs to be an edge line if that's going to stay that way. Now, there's a lot of schools of thought and things that people would recommend to fix this. Um, we're just going to do the cheapest, cheesiest way we can. So with our vert select selected, we're now going to come down and check out the cut tool. So the cut tool is a little misleading. So first of all, it's a toggle again, just like target weld. So once I click it, cut is on. Okay. Now, cut does not mean what you think it means. It doesn't actually like slice an object and separate the two. In the case of 3D modeling, or 3ds Max at least, cutting means we're just going to add an edge line by drawing it in. We can actually just draw our own edge line wherever we want it. Okay, but of course an edge line needs to go between a couple of vertices in order for it to be an edge line. So when we click on cut, we can select one vert, and then we'll get this line that comes out, and it tries to stick and connect to a vertices, whichever vert it finds is most relevant. Okay. Now we could go across this way and try to like flatten out some faces and stuff, but instead we're not going to try to fight these lines we've made. We're just going to make them legal by adding an edge line to it. So if I go all the way to this vert here and click and right click to stop cutting, you see I added an edge line right along where the shaded line is. Okay. It's honestly still not 100% pretty. Okay. But it's no longer an illegal shape. So if we carry this idea forward, we can go like this. Fantastic. And we can do it again over here. And great. Okay. So now those are no longer illegal geometry. Right? And we can turn off cut and carry on. Okay. Now this space here, I'm just going to show you guys real quick, is going to be important later on when we create our drawbridge and we animate it, because our drawbridge is going to have ropes attached to it. And we're going to use this space to hide where our ropes go when the drawbridge is up, which is usually pretty tricky, but we'll manage. Okay. So with that, we're more or less done with our interior. Okay. So we can get back to the top and finish off our Merlons. If you remember when we did the curtain wall, we had a center edge line in the middle of our wall in order for us to do the Merlons to get that peak that we like. But we don't have that here. So it's not an issue. First, we're going to go back to our polygon select, and we're going to make the face selection that we need here. Okay. And with all the faces selected, and look, I've accidentally grabbed some faces I did not intend to grab. No problem. I'm just going to do Alt marquee select to deselect that. I'll double check around, make sure that I've only selected what I want. Okay, I want that one too. But okay. Now with this, we're going to go and grab a little secret tool, if you will. So if we go look up here under this modeling tab, we've got all of these words here, and inside of all these words are a whole bunch of other tools and really handy selection methods that we can also use. And under the heading of loops, there's one here called Insert Loop. Okay, so if we click on this, it should create an edge line for us right down the middle of our selection, all the way around. Okay, which is exactly what we need. And with that, we can now make the selection for our Merlons. So we're going to select these faces here. And again, I'm just following the example in the book. I'm grabbing all the faces that the book wants us to grab, like so. We're grabbing this one, and one in the middle here, like that. Okay. Great. And if you didn't know, you may have guessed, we're going to extrude. So we're going to do an extrusion with settings. This time we're going to do a 0.5 meter extrusion. And we'll click the check mark. There you have it. We got some Merlons, the beginnings of some Merlons. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we need to get all of this edge line in the front, outside of our castle. Now, we're going to have to control select. So we're going to have to select all of these edge lines here. Right up to here. Okay. With that selection made, we're going to go down to our Z coordinates here where it's labeled 6 meters. So we're going to change this measurement to 5.5, which will lower that edge line, giving us that bevel that we recognize from our curtain wall. So after we've dropped this line here, we're going to come up here and we're going to control select the center edge line along those merlons. Okay. Now our textbook here on page 133 tells us to select the top edges, hold the shift key, and drag up. Well, if I do that, this is all that happens. Nothing really happens. Okay? So that's either a typo or perhaps an old way to do this. All we really need to do is just pull up. Okay? We don't need to hold shift to do this. Now, if you want to keep a certain accuracy to the height of this peak here, we can raise it by like around 0.5. So just like there. Okay. Now, with that selection still made, we can apply that same chamfer that we did before, although technically it creates n-gons. So it would be a quad. And it was a 0.05. Okay. But it creates n-gons. So if you didn't want to do this, if you wanted to skip that part, I would almost encourage it, because frankly, it has a whole lot of extra polygons that you don't really need. It really creates n-gons. It's really not a good idea to do that. If you want it blunted, then I recommend you go through and take the time to make the repairs. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make the tower a wee bit taller. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my front selection here. And I'm going to select the vertices that are the top of the merlons and the vertices that are just to the base of those merlons here. So if I show you here in my perspective, you'll see that I've grabbed all of these vertices there. Okay. If I look down here at my Z coordinates, we got a 6.387. The book wants us to add 0.5, so I'll make it 6.8. Now, but in doing that, we've made it too tall on the inside for any player to be able to see beyond these merlons. So we're going to raise this floor here as well. And if we look on the inside of our gatehouse here, now that floor is a little bit low. I'm going to grab these 3 sections of floor, and I'm going to raise it to 5.5. I'm going to add 0.5 to it, creating a bit of a ramp and a lift. All right, and in adding that floor, we've ended up with some illegal geometry here again. So what I'm going to do is, I could do cut, but just to show you guys another way, I'm going to go to my vert select, and I'm going to select both of these verts like this, and I'm just going to click on connect. And connect will just automatically draw a line in between them to make that legal. Okay. And now we're going to make a tricky selection here. We're going to grab all of this. And this wall here. And I'm going to grab this. All right, I'm going to double check, make sure I didn't accidentally select anything I don't want. We're going to add 1 meter, so about 0.8. So getting rid of the negative, it'll be like a 0.8. Like that. Gives a little bit more space up here. All right, so starting to come together, starting to get there, and we're almost done. Now we just need to add some structure to the outside of our gate entrance, and also like make it a little bit prettier. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my vert select here, and I'm gonna grab these 3 verts that make up the like the center of the doorway, if you will. And I'm gonna raise them up, creating kind of a vault like that. Now you'll notice immediately that we have a problem with geometry here. Okay. So what I'm going to do just to make these faces legal again is I'm going to do my vert select. I'll select these 2 verts and I'll hit connect. And I'll do the same thing here. I'll hit connect. Now let's just add a little bit of structure to the outside of this to hold what will later be the actual drawbridge. So we'll go to 4, our polygon selection. Oops, be careful not to accidentally move your structure. We're going to select these 5 faces and we're going to do an extrusion of 0.75. Okay, and then we're going to deselect these faces here. And we're going to do an extrusion of 0.5. Okay, we're going to grab the top face here. And we are going to lower it from 3 to 2.25. Sorry, on the Z, we're from 3 to 2.25, not on the X. There we go. All right, and now we're just going to go around and remove extra geometry that we don't need. So these 2 faces that we just created, we're not going to need. As well as, since this object is primarily going to be on the ground or on terrain inside of whatever game or engine it's going to be, we're also not going to need any of the geometry here. The bottom of our gatehouse, we can delete that. And return that to the budget. All right, checking for more. There's some more here. We don't need these faces here. We'll remove those. Clear any smoothing points. So we're going to do our element selector 5 on our keyboard and select this. We're going to scroll down and clear all. Will help make everything very hard edged. Now it gets to the fun part. So I'll demonstrate some examples, and then it will be up to you guys to kind of figure out how to clean this up. So there's a couple of things going on here. There is some extra geometry that our model doesn't need in order to maintain its shape, right? And remember, we're working with a budget. So if we go look at XView, show statistics, right now we're at 228 polygons, which by the time we symmetry this thing twice will be 4 times 228, 900 polygons. And don't forget, Gatehouse needs to be under 1,000. Okay? So I've already kind of hit that mark personally, I guess. Usually when I do this, it is over budget. But in any case, there's still lots of geometry in here that could be reduced in order to save on budget. And I'll show you some examples, as well as there's some topology that could be fixed. Topology being the way the lines are drawn. For instance, here we have a line that comes down here and then takes a hard right over here to come down this way. It would be really, really nice if this line lined up, right? So we could grab these 4 verts, for example, and we can move this way. Okay. If we were to go to left from right, we're going to set from front to back. There we go. And we can line this up, make it look relatively nice. Now, of course, the eyeball is never really the best way to do that, But I can also go and grab these verts now, go to scale, and pull on that X and tighten that up. And now we know that puppy's going to be straight. There you go. Okay. So that's an example of cleaning up topology, just getting lines to flow in a good direction. It's a good practice. It helps with texturing in UVs as well, to keep lines flowing in a straight direction if you can. That's a good practice to just get some topology to look straighter and nicer. And then, of course, there's some extra geometry here that we simply just don't need. For example, this second to last edge line that goes around the bottom of our gatehouse is not helping to hold any shapes of any kind, right? So we don't need it at all. So we should be able to go to edge select, double click to select the entire edge line. Okay. And this allows me to demonstrate another thing that happens here. So it would be really easy for us to hit delete, but if I hit delete, I lose all of my faces, right? So we can't just hit delete. So 3ds Max has where we can hit right click and we can remove. Now, when we remove the edge line, hey, look, we got exactly what we wanted. However, now what we've done is we've created a whole lot of n-gons. Now, if you're not aware what an n-gon is any face that has more than 4 sides. So you're probably thinking to yourself, hey, wait a minute, none of these have more than 4 sides. However, if I switch to vertex select, you'll see very quickly that the vertices from that edge line that were there remained, which means technically speaking, this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-sided face. Therefore, these are all n-gons. Okay? The way we fix this is go to our edge select, double click the edge we want gone, and if we hold Control and hit backspace, okay, Control backspace will remove the edge and it takes the vertices with it. Okay, so Control backspace will eliminate any topology you don't require and take the vertices with it. Therefore, no n-gons. Okay. However, be careful because some of these lines are holding geometry for you. The last final step here is to grab any edge we want. We're going to go to our modifier list and search for symmetry, apply symmetry, and then this fantastic mess happens, but we don't panic, right? We just start playing with the different symmetry options until we get the symmetry that we're looking for, which is this. And once we're satisfied with that, we can right-click collapse. Yes. And then repeat. We can grab an edge that we want to symmetry to, doesn't matter. And then we can go modifier list, search for symmetry, apply symmetry. Again, we don't panic. We just apply that symmetry where it's needed. So X on flip for me. Double check it. Right click collapse. And you may notice some extra geometry now that we don't need thanks to our symmetry, which you can totally tackle right now if you wanted. So for instance, I could go to edge select, double select this edge, Control backspace, and we don't need that geometry there anymore either. Okay, so we're way under budget. It's fantastic. Even though we have some topology I would consider to be less than ideal, but there's always ways to fix it in better ways than even what I've demonstrated here. Okay, so with that is your gatehouse complete. So don't forget to save. Gatehouse finished. Saved. There you have it. The gatehouse is finished. Now the next video will be the modeling and animating of the drawbridge, and I'm not going to be demonstrating the portcullis modeling and animation, as I would expect you guys to use your textbooks and attempt that on your own. All right. So yeah, everyone, thanks so much for hanging out. Once again, this was the Gatehouse from 3ds Max Basics for Modeling Video Game Assets, Volume 1. And we'll see you all next time.